The sky over Ember Peak is no longer blue. It is a bruised, suffocating gray, choked by the relentless soot of 1,000 industrial vents. From the heights of the Iron Spire, I, Alpha King Casimir Ironmaw, look down at a kingdom that has replaced its heart with a machine. Beside me, Sebastian Stormcrest sneers at a ledger of record profits, dismissing the starving Omegas below as mere broken cogs in his great engine. He doesn't know that I've seen the oxygen tax he wrings from the poor, or that I'm about to shed my royal mantle for the rags of a scarred drifter to find the rot myself. Miles below, in the choking smog of the slums, a girl named Lavinia Emberfell coughs as she drags a heavy cart of ash through the streets. She is a smoke sweeper, a shadow in the gears, selling her very hair just to buy the salt that keeps her sickly brother breathing. She is invisible to the wealthy wolves who sneer at her, but she is the only soul who will stop when a nameless beggar collapses at her feet. Mapping out the intricate politics of Ember Peak and animating these cinematic moments takes weeks of dedicated work. If you find yourself rooting for Lavinia, please consider subscribing. It's a quiet way to support the hours of labor that go into bringing these stories of justice to your screen. The industrial heart of Ember Peak beats with a relentless, metallic thrum that swallows the cries of the weary. Here, in the soot sinks, the air is a thick soup of sulfur and ash that clings to the lungs like wet wool. I watch Lavinia Emberfell through the haze, her small frame straining against the weight of a rusted ash cart. She stops at a merchant's stall, not for food, but to untie a silk ribbon from her head. Her hair, once a vibrant chestnut, is now jagged and uneven. She's been hacking it off, inch by inch, to sell to the wigmakers for a handful of copper. It's not enough for the heart salt, Lavinia. The merchant sneers, weighing a small satchel of gray crystals. Tobias will have to settle for half-breaths tonight. Lavinia doesn't argue. She simply takes the salt, her eyes hollow with a desperation that makes my dormant wolf pace beneath my skin. She tucks the crystals into her threadbare apron, a lifeline for a brother whose heart is as fragile as a flickering candle. This is the prosperity Sebastian boasted of, a world where a girl sells her beauty to buy the very air her brother breathes. I move into her path, my transformation into Caspian complete. I am a ghost of a man, covered in the filth of the vents, my face a map of artificial scars. As I reach the edge of the ash heaps, I let my knees buckle. I hit the soot-covered ground with a heavy, ungraceful thud, letting my breath go shallow. Move it, vagrant. A guard's boot connects with my ribs, a sharp, stinging reminder of the cruelty I've allowed to fester in my absence. The king doesn't pay us to trip over trash. I wait for the second strike, but it never comes. Instead, I hear the frantic rattle of an empty cart and the heavy rasp of Lavinia's breathing. "Stop," she cries, her voice thin but sharp. "He's exhausted. Can't you see he's starving?" The guard scoffs, but he moves on, more interested in the bars at the end of the block than a dying beggar. Lavinia is at my side in an instant. Her hands are rough, calloused by years of vent scrubbing, but her touch is impossibly gentle as she hooks her arms under mine. With a strength born of pure necessity, she drags me across the cobbles toward a leaning shack made of salvaged, corrugated iron and hope. The interior of her home smells of ozone and cheap grease. In the corner, a young boy with a pale, translucent complexion, Tobias, watches with wide, fearful eyes. Lavinia doesn't hesitate. She helps me into a rickety chair and turns to a small pot simmering on a single coal. "We have a guest, Toby," she whispers, though I can see the pot is nearly empty. She pours a single bowl of broth, thin, watery, with nothing but a few scraps of wilted greens floating in the liquid. It is her only meal. I can smell the hunger on her, a sharp, acidic scent, but she holds the bowl out to me with a steady hand. "Drink," she says softly. "It's not much, but it's warm." As I take the first sip, my internal wolf reacts with a sudden, violent clarity. It ignores the meager nutrition, focusing instead on the purity of the sacrifice. The purest fire in the mountain isn't in the forge, it's in this girl. She is giving a stranger the very fuel she needs to survive another day in the vents. The moment of quiet is shattered by a heavy, rhythmic pounding on the iron door. Lavinia pales, her hand instinctively flying to the pocket containing Tobias's salt. 3 tax collectors push their way inside, their polished boots a mocking insult to the dirt floor. Lavinia Emberfell, the lead collector, barks, unfurling a scroll stamped with Sebastian's predatory seal. You missed the secondary vent tithe. With interest and the regional oxygen tax, your outstanding debt now stands at 500 silver pieces. 500. Lavinia's voice breaks. I make 3 copper a week. I've paid every cent I have. Then you'll pay in labor. Or perhaps your brother's lungs aren't worth the mountain's air. The collector leans in, his shadow swallowing her small frame. The High Alpha is a patient man, but the debt must be satisfied, one way or another. They exit as quickly as they arrived, leaving a cold, hollow silence in their wake. Lavinia stands frozen, the empty broth pot in her hand, staring at a debt that represents 1,000 lifetimes of slavery. She looks at me, the beggar she just fed, and for a second, I see the light in her eyes begin to fail. She doesn't know that she's just passed a test she didn't know she was taking, and that the man sitting in her shack is already calculating the exact cost of Sebastian's head. The following week is a blur of ash and whispered rebellion. I spend my days deep in the volcanic vents with Lavinia, my larger frame squeezed into the claustrophobic iron lungs of the mountain. Every time I reach past her to scrape a clogged filter, I feel the unnatural heat radiating from her skin. It isn't the fever of the vents. It's something ancient, a low-frequency hum that vibrates against my own alpha nature. You look at the smoke like you're searching for a way out, Lavinia says, her face streaked with soot as we huddle in a maintenance shaft. I'm searching for the fire, I reply, my voice raspy from the sulfur. She leans her head against the vibrating wall, her eyes distant. My father used to say the mountain wasn't always this angry. He dreamed of a warmed heart mountain, a place where the heat didn't poison the air, but fed the soul. He believed that if someone could speak the language of the flame, the smoke would clear and we'd finally see the sun again. But dreams don't pay the oxygen tax, Caspian. My chest tightens. She is describing a kingdom I failed to maintain, a dream her father died trying to build. Before I can answer, the heavy iron hatch at the end of the tunnel is kicked open. Ajax Thunderfist, the pack enforcer, marches into the sector with a squad of silver guards. They aren't here for maintenance, they're here for blood. A line of Omegas, too exhausted to stand, is herded into the center of the walkway. Among them is a pregnant woman, her belly prominent beneath her stained tunic. She stumbles, her knees hitting the metal grating with a hollow clang. Get up, breeder! Ajax roars, his hand coming down in a backhanded strike that sends her sprawling. The sound of the impact snaps the leash on my restraint. My wolf doesn't just growl, it roars in the silent theater of my mind. The Caspian persona fractures. I step out of the shadows, my back straightening, the muscles of a warrior rippling beneath my rags. For a fleeting second, the artificial scars on my face seem to glow. My eyes lose their dull brown hue, flashing a dangerous, regal gold that pierces through the smog like a sunburst. Ajax freezes, his hand pausing midair as he catches my gaze. He doesn't recognize me, but he recognizes the predator. What are you looking at, beggar? Lavinia's hand suddenly grips my arm, her fingers digging into my skin. Caspian, don't, she whispers, her voice thick with terror. The contact anchors me, dragging me back from the precipice of a full-scale slaughter. I lower my head, forcing the gold to recede into the shadows, but the damage is done. Ajax's eyes narrow with suspicion. By sunset, the word has spread. The beggar in the vents didn't flinch when the enforcer barked. In the cold, calculating towers above, Sebastian Stormcrest recognizes a threat not in a man's rank, but in the hope he inspires. He doesn't move to arrest me. He moves to break the one thing I value. The tax collectors return to the shack, but they don't bring ledgers. They bring shackles. High Alpha Sebastian has reviewed your status. Lavinia, the lead official, sneers. Your tax is doubled again. 1,000 silver. And since you're harboring a vagrant of interest, your brother's medical exemption is revoked. He looks at the pale, shivering Tobias. The cinder pits need small hands. Unless, of course, you hand over the beggar to the enforcer's custody tonight. Lavinia stands between them and Tobias, her body vibrating with a heat that makes the air shimmer. You'll have to kill me first, she rasps. That can be arranged, the official retorts. As they leave, a shadow slips through the door, Damien Ashcroft, the royal healer. He ignores me, moving straight to Tobias, his hands glowing with a soft diagnostic light. He pauses, his eyes widening as he looks from the boy to Lavinia. He turns toward me, his gaze lingering on the gold ring I've kept hidden in my palm. He knows. Casimir. He breathes, so low Lavinia cannot hear. She's not just a smoke sweeper. Look at the way the volcanic vents reacted when she was angry. The mountain isn't erupting because she's holding it together. She's the last solar fire Omega, Casimir. She is the heart of Ember Peak, and Sebastian is trying to throw that heart into the furnace. The central square of Ember Peak is a cauldron of iron and ash. A massive branding iron glows white-hot in a coal-fired brazier, casting dancing, demonic shadows against the soot-stained walls. Hundreds of workers have been herded into the square, forced to witness the justice of the High Alpha. Lavinia is chained to a heavy stone pillar, her head bowed, her chestnut hair shorn jaggedly to the scalp. Sebastian Stormcrest stands on a raised dais, his velvet robes a mocking contrast to the rags of the crowd. He signals to Ajax Thunderfist, who lifts the branding iron. The air hisses as the heat nears Lavinia's shoulder. Let this be a lesson, Sebastian's voice booms through the speakers. The mountain demands its tithe. To withhold it is to steal from the very soul of the pack. I move through the crowd like a wolf through tall grass. The Caspian persona is a skin I am ready to shed. I stop at the foot of the dais, the soot on my face unable to hide the lethal calm in my eyes. Stop, I say. The word isn't loud, but it carries a frequency that cuts through the industrial roar of the square. Ajax pauses, the glowing iron inches from Lavinia's skin. Sebastian sneers, leaning over the railing. The beggar speaks. Do you wish to take her place, vagrant? Or perhaps you'd like to watch the boy burn next? I don't answer with words. I reach up and tear the soot-stained cloak from my shoulders. I stand tall, my spine straightening until I tower over the guards. I release the leash on my power. It isn't a shift, it is a shockwave. A pulse of pure, unadulterated alpha energy explodes from my core, a physical weight that slams into every wolf in the square. The sound is like the mountain itself cracking open. Guards are thrown backward. The crowd is forced to their knees as the sheer gravity of my aura pins them to the stones. Even Sebastian collapses against his gilded chair, gasping as the artificial scars on my face dissolve, revealing the hard, regal lines of a king returned from the dead. I am Casimir Ironmaw. I roar, the sound vibrating in the very bedrock beneath our feet. I have walked your streets as a ghost, Sebastian, and I have smelled the rot you've brought to my mountain. The debt you speak of is not hers. It is yours, and I have come to collect. The square is paralyzed by the sight of their legends standing in the ash. But Sebastian, driven by a decade of desperate greed, screams a single command to his elite silver guard. Seize her. Take the girl to the caldera. Now, in the chaos, before the workers can rise to defend their king, 3 of Sebastian's personal guards, shifters whose hearts are as cold as the steel they wear, slash through Lavinia's chains. They don't fight me. They flee toward the industrial elevators that lead to the volcano's rim. They know the truth that Sebastian has hidden. A solar fire Omega is most volatile at the summit. As they disappear into the smog-choked descent, a fractured memory hits me. The final report from the mining accident 10 years ago. It wasn't an explosion of gas. It was a ritual of blood. I see it now. Sebastian, standing over Lavinia's parents as the mountain bucked and roared. He hadn't wanted their land. He had wanted the solar fire right. He had murdered the lead architect and his mate because they refused to surrender the secret of how to harness the girl's power. He didn't want to save the pack. He wanted to own the fire. I turned toward the elevators, my eyes burning with a gold that promises no mercy. The time for whispers in the soot is over. The king is home, and the mountain is about to scream. The transition from the square to the spire is a blur of righteous fury. I stormed the High Council's chamber, my royal guards, finally emerging from the shadows of the city, arresting the panicked ministers before they can burn the evidence. I slammed the ash-stained ledgers I stole from the tax office onto the central table, the soot from my fingers smudging the ivory inlay. The oxygen tax was never for the pack's survival. I growl at the remaining elders, my voice like grinding tectonic plates. It was a funnel. 5 million silver pieces diverted to Sebastian's private estates, while children like Tobias sold their blood for the right to breathe. This council is dissolved by royal decree. Any man who moves is a traitor to the crown. But the true poison is still at the summit. I leave the elders to the blades of my guards and sprint for the caldera. The air at the volcano's rim is a shimmering curtain of lethal heat. Magma churns below, a liquid sun that has turned the sky a bruised, angry purple. Ajax Thunderfist stands at the very edge of the precipice, holding a shackled Lavinia over the bubbling abyss. Sebastian is there, his eyes wide with the frantic greed of a man who has lost his mind to the flame. "Stop, Casimir!" Sebastian screams over the roar of the rising magma. The mountain is unstable. Only the solar fire shift can settle it. Give me the crown, or I let her fall, and we all burn. I don't negotiate with snakes. I shift mid-stride. My human form shatters into a massive black wolf, my fur the color of cooled obsidian, my eyes twin beacons of gold. I lunge for Ajax, the gray wolf who has served as Sebastian's executioner. The duel is visceral and ancient. We tear at each other on the narrow, crumbling ledge, the heat singeing our fur. Ajax is heavy and brutal, driven by the desperation of a cornered animal, but I am the king of the mountain. Our claws spark against the volcanic rock. I catch his throat, throwing him back from Lavinia, but the ground beneath us gives way. A plume of sulfurous gas explodes, blinding me, and Ajax's heavy paw catches my skull, sending me reeling toward the edge. Lavinia screams, her voice piercing through the industrial roar. She sees me falter, sees the magma rising to claim the ledge. The shackles on her wrists begin to glow. The heat she has suppressed for a decade, the power her parents died to protect, finally finds its conduit. It isn't a shift, it is an ignition. Lavinia's body disappears into a pillar of blinding, white gold light. She doesn't become a creature of flesh. She becomes a wolf of living flame. Her fur a sunburst that pushes back the shadows of the soot. The solar fire wolf leaps, not at me, but at the mountain itself. Her aura radiates a cooling frequency that defies physics, the white light washing over the boiling magma, turning the liquid fire into solid, stable stone in a matter of seconds. The eruption is silenced. The mountain settles. Ajax is thrown back by the sheer force of her purity, falling into the newly hardened crust, while Sebastian collapses, his mind finally breaking as he realizes the fire he tried to steal has chosen its rightful queen. Lavinia stands over me, her white gold flame receding into the soft glow of a solar fire omega. The air at the summit is suddenly, impossibly clear. For the first time in a decade, the smoke has parted, and the real sun is beginning to rise over the peak of Ember Peak. I shift back, reaching for her hand, my fingers finally touching the fire that saved my soul. The metallic thrum of the great engines has been replaced by the rhythmic, steady heartbeat of a mountain at peace. 2 years have passed since the smoke cleared, and the sky over Ember Peak is no longer a bruised gray, but a brilliant, piercing blue. The industrial vents that once poisoned the lungs of the poor now exhale only the warmth of the deep earth, repurposed to heat the homes of every pack member, regardless of rank. The oxygen tax has been struck from the archives, replaced by the Emberfell Accord, a law that declares the air of the mountain a birthright, as free and untouchable as the stars. In the royal archives, Tobias Nightwind sits by a tall window, the sunlight illuminating his healthy, vibrant complexion. His flickering heart is a memory of a darker time. With the air cleared and the solar fire bond stabilizing the mountain's core, he has grown tall and strong. He is no longer a burden in the eyes of the law, but the pack's youngest master scholar, his hands busy with ancient blueprints and the dreams of a father who knew the mountain could be a sanctuary. I stand on the high balcony of the iron spire, no longer looking down at cogs in a machine, but at a kingdom that has learned to breathe again. Lavinia stands beside me, her chestnut hair grown long and wild, catching the gold of the afternoon sun. She wears the mantle of the solar fire queen with a grace that makes the very stone beneath our feet thrum with contentment. The artificial scars on my face are gone, but the memories of the soot-stained shack remain. The taste of the watery broth, the warmth of her hand in the dark, and the moment I realized that she was the only one who saw the man behind the beggar. "You're thinking about the vents again," Lavinia says softly, her fingers interlacing with mine. I pull her closer, the heat of her spirit a constant, comforting fire against my side. "I was thinking about the dead," I admit, looking out over the clear horizon. "I hid my crown to find a traitor, Lavinia. I thought I was descending into the dark to save a kingdom, but I was actually being led toward the light. I found a traitor, yes, but I found the woman who saved my soul. I am the one in debt now." She smiles, and it is the only fire I ever need to see. Below us, in the palace gardens where the ash heaps used to tower, our daughter, a vibrant, laughing pup, chases a butterfly through a meadow of ember lilies. They are brilliant, glowing flowers that haven't been seen in a century, volcanic blooms that only open their petals in the presence of a solar fire queen. The mountain is no longer a furnace, it is a home. And as the sun sets over a kingdom reborn, the only smoke in the air is the distant, sweet scent of wood fires, warming the hearts of a people who finally know what it means to be free.